I had a player who was very anti-side questing to the point where they would not engage with something if they did not think it was connected to the main quest in any way. It is very frustrating. The dungeon master of another game, that he is also a part of, had to pull him aside and ask him, are you an adventurer or not? Because they would intentionally ignore obvious DM lampshading unless explicitly told that they should check it out.
Sir, I'm on my last legs, struggling to feed my children. Please, help me to slay this beast, and perhaps with the gold in its hoard, we can finally—
Nah.
Wait, what?
Look, put quite simply, this is not relevant to the main quest in any way, and we need to hurry.
Dude, I kinda wanted to do that quest.
Look, you don't understand. We're on a deadline. Dude, it's not urgent that we complete the main quest as fast as possible. I mean, think about the story perspective. This guy is asking for our help. Our quest can wait just a little bit. No, not the in-game deadline. We're on an actual deadline. Okay, seriously, it's really weird that you're acting like this is a speed run. Okay, we're just playing DnD. This isn't a speed run. It is, though.
What?
It is, though. Wait, where did that even— We're on an 80% speed run, okay? We are so close to getting 40th place. Alright, that's how the
I think
leaderboard's at
I'm
least.
good.
If we get through this main quest just a
I'm
little
gonna
bit
go
faster,
do the side
we'll
quest.
be able to take that spot. So
What makes things even odder is the times they have DM'd, there is no clear objectives, and the player characters feel like the aides for the NPCs that take care of everything of consequence. There is a lot of waiting, examining ice-cold crime scenes for very few clues that don't lead anywhere, with a very opportunity for action or initiative. Man, I've seen DMs with contradictory playstyles, but this is a bit more extreme than most. This is the kind of guy who plays RPGs with hundreds of hours of content and then complains that, oh, there's nothing to do, when they skip through all of the actual content. Ugh, the best type of gamer. Now, the person I'm talking about was a bit of a murder hobo with a fascination for collecting teeth in our very first campaign. And we were all murder hobos that campaign, much to our DM's distress, but she's gotten great ever since then. Aside from this story. It's not really a horror story, more like a what, why kind of thing. It's a bit of a long one, though. It was our second campaign I DM'd, which was homebrew, and it was an ancient Rome kind of setting. What if people survived Pompeii and turned into tieflings? What if Caesar turned into an actual god emperor after being assassinated? What if there was that little village in Gaul that held off the Romans with the help of a druid and a magic potion? I was DM for this one. This person sounds like my crazy Latin teacher, and I cannot get over it. It was a party of 5, but the one player I want to focus on is the Paladin. During session 0, she said she wanted to play as a centaur paladin of Venus. Now I made the assumption that she, knew who Venus was. I had a small mini forum on Roll20 with topics informing players about the setting and the Roman gods, so it's not like she couldn't have had a look. Her backstory was that she was nobility, and that her house was cursed by Neptune generations ago for an ancestor who had refused his advances. The curse being that they were all centaurs, and her story arc was to get rid of this family curse. Cut to session 1, where my players were in their local tavern and had already established themselves as well-known adventurers to the locals. Idea was that they went around town speaking to the locals while I waited for the right moment to press the plot button. My players decided to visit a bathhouse since, it's ancient Rome, where they could go for a sauna, while the attendants were glad to see a paladin of Venus and offered a special room for her. Paladin was very brutal and rude, unlike what people would expect for a follower of Venus, but no worries. While they were there, she heard some people talking about the special services priests and priestesses of Venus offered to the people, upon request, and one was building up the courage to ask Paladin. When Paladin heard this, she went over and beat all these people up. What'd you say about my goddess? Say that again! Say that again! They're talking about my god. It's like she's a prostitute. Sorry. Even I know. The other players looked up at her out of character with the kobold warlock going, Paladin, you do know what Venus was the god of, right? No, I just picked her because she has a cool name. Tiefling Bard replied with, she's the god of love and intimacy. What do you think people would say and think of her? Red faces and awkwardness ensued. I think it was a mercy when I pushed the plot button, which was a Tarask busting out of the ground and laying waste to the town. What level are your party members? Because I'm just chilling out in the starting town, level 1, and then suddenly Godzilla! My players fought their way out of the town, saving people along the way as the little creatures that fell on the Trask's back began to attack people. Think Cloverfield, the first film. But wait, there's more. After the session, Paladin decided to abandon the Venus thing and asked if it was okay to pick a different god as a retcon. Of course, I obliged. Good DMing, by the way. I know a lot of DMs that would be really upset about a retcon, but in this case, it's early in the campaign, and it's clearly a topic she's uncomfortable with, so that's all good with me. She decided to pick Mars as her god, since that was more her playstyle, be a thuggish brute who ruled with might makes right. And that was fine for a while. She enjoyed describing fatalities when she struck final blows. What's the typical brute enforcer archetype? It's good stuff. But then came Strahd. Yes, my players got swallowed up to the domains of dread for a Halloween one-shot, where they fought a Roman centurion Lich Dreadlord who was actually Paladin's ancestor. I had it that Strahd showed up and offered them a way out of that domain of dread if Paladin promised to visit Strahd in Barovia. Paladin reminded him a lot of Irina, and it would have been a chat and a drink, see where the plot went from there. On the next full moon, he would send a Vistani caravan to pick her up. Paladin swore on her honor that she would visit him when the carriage would arrive. So Strahd held up his end of the bargain and helped the party escape from the Roman domain of dread. Cut to a few sessions later, and the other players' plot hooks have passed. When the full moon appears, at night, just like clockwork, the carriage arrives at the camp. Now, it's been a few months since that Strahd session, and Paladin has a bit of a bad memory, so I explained real quick what the deal was, that she made a deal with Strahd. She listened, nodded, and just decided, no, my character refuses to step in this carriage.
House Glover will stand behind House Stark, as we have for 1,000 years.
1 hour later.
Lord Glover wishes us good fortune, but he's staying in Deepwood Mont with his men.
House Glover will stand behind House Stark as we have for 1,000 years.
Though I will say, this is a bit different from House Glover's oath in Game of Thrones. This is going on a date with famous incel Strahd, so someone saying no in hindsight, it makes sense to me. Especially if they don't even remember the oath in the first place.
Anyway, I went with the DM, "Are you sure?" hinting that this was a bad idea. She doubled down on not only refusing, but insulting the Vistani driver. I mean, it was in character, and Mars has no rules against breaking that kind of oath, so I allowed it. So imagine her surprise that every night afterwards, the party was attacked by wolves, skeletons, and other undead horrors. Things came to a head when Strahd had sent an avatar of death after her. Dude got left on red and sent the Grim Reaper.
Great spirit of death, servant of murk, rise! Rise before me! Strahd von Zarovich, master of Barovia. Lord of Graves heeds your call, von Zarovich. Yes. What bidding would you have carried out? There are interlopers on the material plane. Hunt them down and sunder their souls. If I may ask, what transgressions have they committed? They have insulted me one too many times. You got rejected again, didn't you? Yes. Yes. This is like the 4th time. I miss Kevin.
At this point, Mars himself is intervening. A quick council was made in the realms in between, the Roman realm and Barovia, where a compromise was made. If she were to engage with Strahd in a trial by combat and win, Strahd would leave her alone, but if she lost, she would have to go to that dinner. Sorry. Mars heavily agreed with this and urged Paladin to accept the offer and beat the unlife out of the vampire. Paladin, who at this point was gung-ho for a fight, refused the fight. Not because of honor, but because she was scared Strahd would beat her. Again, the table looked confused at her. Once more, I was like, are you sure? And once again, she doubled down. It's Mars, standing next to her, the actual god of war, and she still refused. For the 3rd time in that campaign, she was confused by the consequences. Mars abandoned her, so she lost her paladin powers, and were it not for Tiefling Bard taking her place and going on a date with Strahd, it would have gotten really bad. Thing is, I would have nerfed Strahd, so it was more than possible for her to beat him, so I didn't set her up to fail. However, there is an upswing to this. Paladin took this all in stride, and after session, we had a chat. We both decided that she would become an Oathbreaker Paladin and play by her own rules. She had a mentor, similar to the Fallen Knight from Baldur's Gate 3, who would guide her through the process of being an Oathbreaker and what it meant. By the way, that guy freaking pissed me off. Alright, I just want my vow back, and dude extorted me out of 1,000 gold. No one takes my gold, you red-eyed bitch! In short, at this point, she could play however she wanted with no restrictions, and it went very well from that point onward. With the help of the mentor, who was a black dragon in disguise who hated the Roman gods, she broke the curse of Neptune and could swap from centaur to human form. In the final session, she held the line against hordes of undead as the other players did their part in saving the world from the return of the Titans. In fact, she and the Tiefling Bard were the only ones who survived the final battle, with both characters retiring in their own colony. We're now playing Curse of Strahd, and her role-playing has improved so much that now she's playing a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type female character with 2 different character sheets and role-plays the dual personalities very well. The ancient Roman campaign was really fun, and we all fondly remember it to this day. Look, this is the kind of quote-unquote horror story that you are inevitably going to encounter. Sometimes people just make stupid decisions, they don't think through the consequences, and as a dungeon master, you need to figure out a way to work through that without being too harsh, but at the same time without being too lenient. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's not easy. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that players and DMs need to work together to create stories that everyone will enjoy. This DM tried to offer multiple decisions. This player doesn't want to go on the date with Strahd? Okay, they fight Strahd instead. The player, however, didn't really want either of those things. And yeah, that might seem super confusing outside looking in, but you know, sometimes people just make confusing decisions. Like I said, that happens all the time at my game. One miscellaneous piece of advice I will throw in though is try not to do these one-on-one battles, man. I think that they don't work 90% of the time. I've seen them be decent, but I see them be cringy and boring for everyone else way more often than not. In this case, I actually think Paladin would have gone along with the fight with Strahd if she had the party to back her up. You'd be surprised what players are willing to do when they have everyone together. So during fall of 2022, I found out about this lab with various group activities for people with Asperger's syndrome, which I have. I discovered one of the groups was a Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition group. I hear all about 4th edition, 3.5. Was 2nd edition good? I mean, I see the 5-star rating, but you guys also gave Horde of the Dragon Queen 5 stars, so excuse me for being a bit suspicious. Anyway, this was around the time I was really getting into D&D, and if the system was different, I thought it would be still fun. It started off that way, with a group of 5 and our Dungeon Master with a trilogy of modules from 2nd edition. During Christmas and New Year's, we took a break. In the meantime, we'd get the Player's Handbook, the DM's Guide, the Monster Manual, and PDFs of Xanathar and Tasha's, so we switched everything but the story to 5th edition. All in all, it was fun. Though over time, I think he started to get kind of pedantic. Long-winded exposition about the lore, stopping players mid-speech for something or other, brings the game to a halt if he or a player remember a rule differently. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's not, but it always ruins the pace. A strict adherence to alignment, like it's as important in 5th edition as it is in 2nd edition. Separately, smaller things, but with the whole package together, I'm just checking out at times. I'm beginning to get the feeling he's not really good with balancing in 5th edition. We've had 3 combat encounters where we've almost had a TPK. First time, 2 characters died, and the others managed to pull through because a DMPC, made for story reasons, wasn't even supposed to be in the fight originally, helped them out. Oh, so this DM looked at Zank in the D&D movie and thought, wow, that's actually a great idea! Like, seriously, it's the exact same thing. Dude starts as just a guide, and then he backs up the party in a fight last second. I mean, someone's ripping off someone's homework here. The second time, another character, the replacement of one of the previous 2, by the way, failed his death saves, and we only got out because our last living member surrendered before the others could die. The third one we're supposed to finish next session, but half the party is already rolling their death saves, and we're nowhere close to downing even half the enemies. One member of that half is the replacement of the replacement character on top of that, and you can imagine how thrilled that dude is. He also had the replacement start at the back of level 3, the one we had started the campaign with, while the others are already level 5. He insisted this is how the rules go, but I haven't found anything about that. So is this an actual thing?
We lost Gerald already. Oh, hey. Hi, I'm here to apply for the new adventuring position. Yeah, you're like our 5th new applicant. What are you gonna be playing? Well, I'm a gunslinger. If it's Matt Mercer's spec, I guess you get decent stuff at 3rd level. Wait, I'm 3rd level. I'm starting at... I thought this was for level 5 adventurers. Oh, it is! That does not seem very fair. How am I supposed to level up if I instantly die the next fight? I'm just gonna be holding you guys back. Trust me, I'm aware. DM? What? Look, if you're gonna kill us off, I get it, but if you're gonna load up the party with weaker characters and keep on making the fights harder, that's just gonna lead to a snowball effect. If combat's gonna matter in this campaign, the party needs to be on somewhat equal level. I mean, how am I supposed to level up if I just am dead?
Look, that's just how the book works, okay? There's nothing I can do about it, alright? If you can't handle the adventure, I don't really know what to tell you.
That doesn't seem...
Wait, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Hey, stop that. You're not supposed to be able to check the
really
rules.
make any sort of
That's my job.
sense.
I'm the dungeon
yeah,
master. Put those down. Stop it.
Yeah, the rules on death are
Please.
He's a pretty chill dude outside the game, and a husband and a father with his family, and not that much free time in general. I feel bad about feeling like his sessions are becoming a chore. Am I being a whiny prick here? I'm honestly starting to run out of things to say before we get to the actual bit, so just, like, hit the drum roll already. Not the a-hole, but yes, the a-hole if you don't tell him. You definitely need to tell this guy what is up with the campaign. Look, sometimes the dice are just not in your favor. I've had a good, fair share of encounters that just get freaking insane, where people only make it out by a hair's breadth, but the point is that they do make it out. I've been balancing encounters to be extremely tight for a long time, and it's hard. You know, it's a skill. I wasn't always good at it. It takes practice. Maybe this DM wants to do that, but just doesn't have the chops to properly create the encounters yet. However, this DM doesn't know they're doing something wrong until you tell them. You should tell them that, hey, these encounters do not feel good, and I think that you are balancing them way too tight to the wire. Also, starting at level 3 rather than 5, I mean, I don't like that at all. I think that is just straight up a bad move. No two ways around it. A couple of years ago, my friends and I were playing Shadow of the Demon Lord. A Shadow of the Demon Lord story involving PC death. I would say it's weird it happened twice. But the more I learn about this system, I'm starting to think it's not so weird. And I was playing a Clockwork, a race of sentient clockpunk robots possessed by human souls. Their name was Cotter. I was a magician specializing in technomancy, basically using magic to build machines like weapons, armor, vehicles, etc. My favorite technomancy spell was Flamethrower, which allowed you to build a handheld flamethrower that had 6 shots worth of blasting fire. Aside from being awesome, it was especially useful in this adventure, which was essentially an uprising of corrupted forest spirits. Many of the enemies we faced were plant-based creatures made of wood and vines, so Cotter's flamethrower made short work of them.
Oh, Jack, look at these corrupted forest spirits. We may be able to kill.
Oh my god!
Pretty boss flamethrower!
As we progressed through the story, Cotter eventually learned how to build hand grenades and automatons to aid in battle. Side note for anyone wondering, these are different from Clockworks. They're not sentient, they're basically mechanical golems. That's not what I'm wondering. I'm assuming this is some kind of fantasy setting based on the other Shadow of the Demon Lord stuff I've seen. And I add guns into fantasy all the time, but I've always been bad with explaining how that even happens when swords and bows are also commonplace.
You may resist for now, but this is the legendary blade of my father's 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 father's
1 week later.
father's father. You will not be able to stand against its power for long. Your sword is no match for my skills. Well, that was easy. There is no honor in the way you fight. Dude, what is the big deal? Honor schmonor, okay? It gets the job done. I mean, apparently we're living in a world where I can use modern weapons in a medieval setting. I mean, why would you use literally anything else? This shreds through basically everything in the game. Well, my blade is more elegant than your weapon. I can stand up to you at any time.
How do you guys do it? I'm actually curious. Anyway, at this point, I got myself a small amount of automaton soldiers, and then armed myself with automatons with flamethrowers and 2 grenades for each of us. At first, this was working out fine for a bit. We took care of some more plant monsters, but then our party encountered a pair of wicker men. Giant walking figures made of twisted vines and tree branches. Me and my automatons, of course, set one of them ablaze, but what we didn't learn until too late was that wickermen did take more damage from fire, but being set on fire made their attack stronger because now they're covered in fire. In retaliation, the now burning wickerman swung its flaming wooden fist down upon Cotter. Now, one thing to note about both the grenades and the flamethrower was that the person holding them takes any amount of fire damage, they explode immediately. And in the flamethrower's case, the explosion's damage is based on how many rounds of fuel are left in its tank. So not only did poor Cotter end up exploding, his 2 automaton warriors got caught up in the blast radius, so they both exploded as well. I don't remember what amount of damage it all rolled up to in total, but the Dungeon Master said it was enough to kill all 3 of them, as well as the Wicker Man, and asked me to describe Carter's death. So I told my party about how, as Carter's life flashed before his eyes, he suddenly recalled something he said the other night at camp. You know, fellas, if I were to die right now in some sort of fiery explosion due to my own carelessness, well, that would be just okay.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Before a humongous fireball erupted all around him, leaving behind nothing but a smoldering crater and a few bits of charred wood and metal gently raining down from above. The rest of the party were able to take care of the Wicker Man, and I eventually rolled up a new character who managed to survive to the end of the adventure. But of course, Carter will be forever remembered as the Clockwork who went out with a bang. Horror stories are only really horror stories from an out-of-game sense. This is more like an in-game unfortunate event, which you are inevitably going to encounter, and frankly, these kind of things are great. Maybe not character death specifically, but unfortunate events are what makes these kind of games more thrilling to run and to play. And this is the definition of a very unfortunate event. Sometimes, yeah, short-sightedness like this can just slip past your mind. I mean, as a Dungeon Master, I likely would not even realize that this kind of thing could be a threat for the character, and might be caught off guard myself by the sudden explosion. Keep an eye on your abilities, read the whole text, and make sure you know about any unforeseen consequences. Or don't. It might be more fun that way. So I wanted to try out tabletop role-playing games in college. I was working at the library over the summer, and all my bosses and co-workers were involved in tabletop role-playing games, and it genuinely sounded fun. So my co-worker and friend, we'll call them Dungeon Master, say they can host a game for us and we can meet in the dorm living room. The characters of the story will be myself, the Dungeon Master, my former RA, which, by the way, did college but never lived in a dorm in my entire life. I actually still don't know what an RA actually is. All I know is everybody hates them. Anyway, yeah, RA, we'll call them Jasmine, and there was a 4th person in there we'll call Mitchell, why not, who didn't really interact during this but was there. So we meet up, the Dungeon Master starts explaining the game to everyone. I don't recall the name, but it's a sort of steampunk world with airships and some evil corporations. The Dungeon Master hands out character sheets to fill out, and when I ask questions, I only give vague responses. So I'm struggling a bit. But from the description of the game, I have a character idea that's really cool, and I'm really excited. Now for context, I am non-binary, but at the time, I was only out to my coworkers, as my school really did not like having trans students there. The Dungeon Master knows this. Mitchell knows this. Jasmine is working elsewhere on campus and does not know. I was at the time still going by she, her, and was still exploring my gender quite a bit, only having recently discovered that I wasn't cis at the least. So back to character creation, I decide I want my character to be an airship pirate captain who essentially Robin Hoods through sabotaging this corporation that was evil, and I had a chaotic good alignment. I was a druid and wanted to be able to shapeshift, namely so I could shift between male and female, and would be generally changing my appearance, which was very helpful for stealth. I'm discussing this with the Dungeon Master when Jasmine cuts in. Jasmine said that I can't do that. That's really transphobic and offensive to transgender people. In my head, I'm like, ma'am, I am transgender people. But I try to stay polite and decide to just come out to her to smooth things over so she'll leave my character alone.
Man, I hate X kind of person.
Well, I'm X kind of person.
Well, I hate you. I think you're disgusting and horrible, and my God, I want.
She responds by going off that I'm lying so I can get away with it, that Enby people aren't real, that I'm transphobic and misinformed. I'll be honest, I kind of shut down. Not only was coming out a big deal on that campus, but she immediately made me feel unsafe, to say the least. I'm also autistic and couldn't handle bullying very well. It can cause me to become nonverbal, and I cannot speak, and I'm very compliant out of fear. She grabbed my sheet and threw it away and passed me a new one. The Dungeon Master and Mitchell? Yeah, I said Mitchell. Yeah, they both say nothing at all. Oh, and by the way, the DM is also non-binary and autistic. Okay, so maybe they were having a similar problem to you. That silence was very, very loud to me, though. I started filling it out again, obviously not asking questions anymore since I'm not exactly talking. I don't think it would be safe to start signing to the DM. They could understand basic ASL, but I was also scared that Jasmine would go off since I'm ableist towards deaf people or something like that if I switch to ASL. I leave out the shapeshifting and just sort of doodle in the character section instead. The DM looks at our sheets and discusses what the premise of the game will will be based on our characters. I think we're going to start with my character stealing ammo from the corporation and run into the other characters pretty much doing the same thing. And then have a big old getaway on my ship. I know I like tree bended at some point, like that girl from Sky High. It was honestly such a cool premise. I still love that character, but at the end of the session, I just went to my room and cried. I didn't want to betray my character and leave out such an important aspect from them and just pigeonhole them and myself into being a girl. I didn't want to sit there and be treated like that while my friend sat there and did nothing. Hell, I still considered Jasmine a friend before that. I just kind of didn't go to future sessions, and no one ever asked me about it. Yeah, see, that's the problem right there. Look, in the moment, when everything's hitting the fan, I get how some people can shut down and not be able to help out. I've done that too. But afterwards, that's when colors are shown, okay? Because it doesn't hurt you to check on people in the aftermath, to just ask if they're okay. Leaving them hanging like that? That's not great friending moves. I haven't tried playing again since then. That was literally my first exposure to tabletop role-playing games, and I was scared of other groups treating me in the same way. I found this channel recently, I've been listening to a lot of the stories, and it's actually giving me hope of trying things again. That probably sounds a little odd since these stories are about bad DMs and players, but in the telling of them, there's also people calling out the bad behavior or supporting the writer. So, even if it's the focus on the bad, it reveals the good as well. Maybe my chaotic druid pirate will get another chance to exist if I can find a group who will welcome them and me. And I think you will, okay? I've been so fortunate in finding a very queer space for me to exist in myself, and I'm happy with that. You made the right call bowing out of this group rather than erasing the identity of your character. Yeah, their non-binary identity probably wouldn't play into the story itself, but it's still an important aspect of the character that you care about. I mean, people have in the past gotten upset at me for not making all of my characters pansexual and romanceable, but look, there are times where a character has a certain sexual or gender identity that isn't compatible with everyone, and that means that not every character is going to be romanceable. This is especially important to me when it comes to asexual characters because, you know, I'm asexual, but it goes for all sorts of orientations as well. Erasing parts of characters that are important to you just because someone wants to bone them, or worse, because somebody is just being a douche, yeah, it's not worth it. And that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tabletop Tavern Tips series, where we cover tips for both DMs and players, old and new. We're almost at 100 episodes. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment Strahd, the incel, to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.
Ow! Ow! Ow, that hurt! Oh, that hurt!